Welcome back to Double Down University. I'm back at you guys with the NFL Prizepicks video for Thursday Night Football on December the 22nd. So one of my subscribers brought up a great point in one of my videos that why don't I do a recap video on the previous videos, like the previous picks that I've had. So today I'm going to start off this video by doing just a recap of last video, which was the Week 15 video. So the first pick I had was Miles Sanders over 68.5 rushing yards. So let's go to that game. So Miles Sanders, here it is. So Miles Sanders finished with 11 attempts, 42 rushing yards, and he was 27 yards short, or 28 yards short of his line. So he didn't get there, but one of the picks I also gave out was Jalen Hurts over 9 rushing attempts. So he had 17, and that's a large part of why Miles didn't go over his rushing attempts, or his rushing yards, I should say. So that one was a miss. And then we also had Greg Dulcich over 30, is it 38.5? Yep, no, he had to get over 37.5. So he was like 27 yards short. If we can go to, here he is, the Broncos game. So the Broncos game, he was actually, he had 1 catch for 11 yards, and he only had 2 targets. So I thought his volume was going to be higher based on his rapport with Brett Ripon. So apparently, they decided to use Eric Tomlinson more. So they gave him some of his touches. So they gave him 3 targets, and he had 3 catches for 28 yards and a touchdown. So they kind of rode the hot hand there. So that was a miss on that pick. But the research was there. The numbers were great, but it just didn't go our way. As well as the other pick I had, which was Sam Darnold over 25.5 passing attempts. So as I stated in that video, was that I felt that the Steelers were the better team in that matchup, and I think the Panthers were favored by 3. So I said that the line was off and that they would be down majority of the game, which was the case because Pittsburgh, they scored in every quarter, and Carolina only had 7. They scored a touchdown in the second quarter, and they didn't score in the first quarter and the third quarter. So the game script worked out well where he was down majority of the game. They just didn't allow him to throw the ball as much. Like they had Chuba Hubbard got 4 carries, Deontay Foreman got 10 carries, and Sam Darnold had 2 carries, but they only let him throw the ball 23 times when they were down, which is crazy to me. Because if you're trying to make a comeback in the game, you want to throw the ball. So I don't know why, but a lot of that I think too. Let's look at their sacks, because I think that a lot of that were he was trying to throw the ball, but he got sacked. Yeah, so he had 4 sacks on him. So those are potential throws too as well that he may have been taken away. Like if 3 of those, if they would have just got 1 sack and he would have been able to just throw the ball out of bounds on 3 of those plays, he would have been able to go over that line. But like I said, the research was there, it just didn't come through on the field. And then the other one was the Terry McLaurin for Sunday night. Terry McLaurin over 58.5 receiving yards. Let's go to that game. Terry McLaurin. Here it is. So Terry had himself a game. He had 6 catches, 70 yards, and that line was way off. Like it was too low, especially for his recent history and his track record against the Giants in his career. So out of those 5 picks, it was 2 out of 5. One thing I noticed too, just in self-evaluation, just evaluating like my picks and stuff that I've been posting, is that a lot of times, sometimes I kind of give out too many picks. So, some of them be fringe plays where I'm not as strongly confident in them, but I just want to kind of give you guys a variety to be able to pick, and mix and match different things, where you don't pick the same player twice and kind of expose yourself to one player. But moving forward, I'll probably shorten down my list and have just maybe top 4 or top, 5 picks still. But tell you guys which ones are fringe plays and which ones I really strongly lean towards. So with that being said, let's moving on to tonight's matchup. So we have the New York Jets versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the 5 picks I have for you guys today is Trevor Lawrence over 14.5 fantasy score, Zach Wilson over 11.5 fantasy score, and then we have C.J. Mosley over 8 tackles and assists. Then we have Garrett Wilson over 55.5 receiving yards. And then last but not least, we have Mr. Christian Kirk over 4 receptions. So let's get into it. So a lot of these numbers are really low just based on the weather aspect of the game. So there's going to be a 20-mile-an-hour wind gust and a 99% probability of precipitation throughout this game. So it will be raining the whole game as well as a wind gust. So it could be bad for field goal kickers as well. So I kind of wanted to target Trevor Lawrence just based on the fact that I still just think that they're undervaluing this guy. Like, of course, he's questionable for a toe injury, but he's been questionable with this toe injury for a couple weeks now, since week 13 when he picked up that knock of a toe injury against Detroit. But as I was looking through his numbers, so they're going up against the 7th-ranked defense opposing quarterbacks. So they're a real stingy defense to opposing quarterbacks. They are 7th in the league. So as I was looking at Trevor, so I just broke it down to top 15. So in the top 15, so of all the teams that he's played that had a top 15 defense to opposing quarterbacks, he has only missed this number of 14.5 one time, which was against Denver. And every other game, he's been well above it, like 17.2, 17.4, 34, 21, and 18. So with him, I think he just needs to throw for 2 touchdowns and 200 yards, or just 1 touchdown, 200 plus yards, and then a couple rushing yards here and there. But also note that Jacksonville last game, they've got their left tackle. He got hurt, so he tore his ACL, or he had a knee injury, and so he's out for the year. And then they also have Brandon Sheriff, and he's their right guard, and their right tackle, Mr. Jawan Taylor. They were limited in practice so far this week, so keep an eye out on that and make sure that they're both in the lineup, because that could make their lineup offensive line wise a little bit worse and more subject to, like, pressure and stuff like that as well. But they will be starting a new right tackle, or no, left tackle I should say. His name is Mr. Walker Little, and he's been terrible so far in his limited time. He had a 10% blown block percentage, which is terrible. Anything over 4 is pretty bad. So 10 is astronomically terrible. So keep an eye out on him and that matchup with him, as well as Quentin Williams should be back for the Jets, so he should be able to push the pocket. And I really like this fantasy score just based on the fact that even if his line is not intact, he should be able to get the ball out quick, or to also unlock some of his rushing potential to be able to run and get a couple yards here and there to boost up his fantasy to go along with his passing. And let's say he throws a touchdown and let's say 250 yards or 225 yards, he should be able to go over. Even if he was to throw an interception, he could just rush for 20 yards and then be able to negate that. So I like him in this spot as well. And then if you want to dig a little deeper and look at the Jets versus opposing quarterbacks and how much fantasy points they give up. So out of 15 games this year, the Jets have given up over 14.5 fantasy scores 6 times to opposing quarterbacks as well. So I really like this spot for him. And then moving on to Mr. Zach Wilson, his fantasy score is 11.5. It's low again, because based on the factor of rain today, or tonight I should say. So with him, I think he can hit this line pretty easily. He's only missed this line 3 times this year when he was a starter. So I really like this spot for him. He also has rushing potential as well. I think if he throws for at least, let's say 195, 200 yards, and he has a little bit of rushing added on to that, where he throws for a touchdown, I think he can easily go over this line without a doubt. So I really like that line for him as well. And then if you want to dig a little deeper and look at the Jaguars pass defense, they are 27th in the league in opposing quarterbacks yards per attempt. So yards per pass 7.1, opposing passes per game 35.4, which is 25th in the league, and then passing yards per game allowed is 252, which is 29th in the league, and their sack percentage is really really low, so they don't really pressure the quarterback as much, which is good because he should be able to stay upright and be able to get the ball to his receivers. So I really like that spot for Mr. Zach Wilson. Moving on to C.J. Mosley. So C.J. Mosley, he has hit this line of 8 tackles or more in every game except for, let's say, 4 games where he's come close. 2 of those 4, he's finished with 7 tackles as opposed to 8 to push. So I really like this for him, and he's kind of like that captain of the defense, and he kind of gets everybody basically in check and make sure everybody knows the call on defense and sets everybody up. But he's also a great tackler, as you guys may have known if you follow him through his time with Baltimore. And if you want to dig a little deeper into like last year, because I don't like to do too far much of a sample size where he's not with that current team like he used to be. So if you even date back to last year, he's only missed this line twice out of the games that he's been able to start. So I really like this to even have push potential there with the 8, but I think he goes well over. I think I could see him getting at least 11 tackles today, because I feel like the Jets should be on defense a lot going up against the Jags offense, because their offense been pretty hot. So I think he should be able to rack up a bunch of tackles. Moving on to the 4th pick, which is Mr. Garrett Wilson over receiving yards. I like him in this spot because the Jaguars give up the 8th most receiving yards to wide receivers this year, which is, I think, is kind of unbelievable, because if you watch them from a numbers perspective, especially on defense, you look at their pass defense and you see like, oh, they're 9th in the league in opposing completion percentage and yards per pass, and they're just top 10 in everything or top 15 in everything in passing category. But when you break it down to just wide receivers, and we can kind of go back, so let's say versus the Jets. Wide receivers. No, the Jags, I should say. Yep, so he's going against the Jags. My bad. So, wrong team. So, the Jags. So, if we go back to points allowed to wide receivers, and then we can go to the Jaguars. That is the opponent. So, as you can see with the Jaguars, they give up. Let's go back even further. Here it is. Okay, so receivers, and let's find the Jaguars. So the Jaguars, here they are. So they're 25th against wide receivers. They give up 19 targets, 12 receptions, and 155 yards. So they average 12 yards per catch. So they give up the 8th most in the league as far as yards to wide receivers. So yeah, so I like him in this spot, and as well, he has a really really good target share, as even in his last, if we break it down to his last 4 games, he's getting at least 8 targets a game. One game he had 15 against Minnesota, 7 against Buffalo, 9 against Detroit. So the volume is there for him to be able to get his yards. And as you can see, he's gone over this line in his last 4 games, and 4 out of his last 5 against New England. He only had 3 targets, so the production, he has to be daggone near perfect in order to be able to produce that number with only 3 targets. So I'm just pretty much banking on the volume to be there and the yardage to be there as well. Backed on, him getting a couple long catches. And we can kind of look at his ADOT. So his average depth of target is 9.8 yards. So that's pretty good. He's targeted on 23% of the routes that he runs, as well as the percentage of team targets is 23.1. So that's good as well. Air yards per game, 78.4. His catch rate is not the greatest. He doesn't really drop the ball as much too as well. So I just overall like him in the spot. Moving on, last but not least, Mr. Christian Watson. So with him, I just think this is just a play on just game script wise. You know, I feel like Sauce Gardner is going to match up against Zay Jones and kind of take him away from Trevor Lawrence. So in that instance, I feel like all the targets will get funneled towards Christian Kirk. And as you can see, his target volume is crazy this year. So he's only had 2 games where he's been targeted less than 6 times this year. So the volume is there with him. And then over the last, let's say the last 5 or 6 games. So let's go to the last 6 games. He's been targeted 9 times, 12 times, 9 times, 8 times, 7, and 10 last week against Dallas. Last week he had 6 catches for 92 yards. And then the week prior he had 5 catches for 45 yards, 6 catches for 104, 4 for 46. So at least bare minimum, I expect him to push with 4. And then also, if you want to dig a little deeper than that, this year on the road, he has had, he's had 5 targets is his minimum output of targets that he's had on the road. And then as far as receptions wise, he's only missed this line 1 time this year on the road to at least push with that 4 reception. So I really like this. This is a strong spot for him as well. So yeah, so those are my picks for today. I appreciate you guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And then I'll go over them one more time for you guys. So I have Trevor Lawrence over 14.5 fantasy score. Zach Wilson over 11.5 fantasy score. CJ Mosley over 8 tackles and assists. And then Garrett Wilson over 55.5 receiving yards. Christian Kirk over 4 receptions. So yeah, so those are my picks today. Best of luck, guys. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.